What is going on, guys? We are back for the final episode of the week with Matthew chapter 17. This is the Bible vlog. So chapter 17 starts off with an unusual event called the Transfiguration of Jesus. Now, we read about this previously in the book of Mark, but what happens is that Jesus goes up onto a mountaintop and he takes Peter, James, and John with him. Now, when you hear the word transfiguration, it actually means to transform into something more beautiful or like a higher spiritual state. So let's go ahead and look and read about what happens to Jesus here. So look over at verses 2 through 4 in chapter 17. And he, talking about Jesus, was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Now, this is really interesting because there is so much representation in this moment with Jesus. Moses and Elijah didn't just appear by chance or because they just happened to be friends with Jesus. Them standing with Jesus is showing Jesus' fulfillment of the Old Testament. Moses represents the law, as in the law of Moses, and Elijah represents the prophets. Both of these men are arguably the most respected in Jewish history, and there they are conferring with Jesus before he's about to go to the cross. Jesus is the completion of the law and the fulfillment of the prophecies in the Old Testament. All right, now look over at verses 5 through 8. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and suddenly a voice came out of the cloud, saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. But Jesus came and touched them and said, "Arise, and do not be afraid." When they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Wow. Now, this is the second time in Matthew that we hear God the Father speak audibly out loud that Jesus is his son. Now, the first is when the Holy Spirit comes on Jesus after he's baptized, and now Jesus is fulfilling the law and the prophets, and what does God say? Hear him. Listen to Jesus. What God is saying is that everything must now give way to Jesus, who will replace the old way with the new way. Just amazing stuff. Okay, so Jesus, Peter, James, and John are now coming back down the mountain, and they're greeted by a huge mess at the bottom. While they've been up on the mountain, there is a demon-possessed boy that is brought to the other disciples who are waiting at the base of the mountain, and this boy's father is trying to ask the disciples to cast the demon out of his son. Well, the disciples are not able to do it, but they can't figure out why. So finally, the father sees Jesus coming back down the mountain, and he brings his demon-possessed boy directly to him. So Jesus casts the demon out, but the disciples were not able to do it. Now, there's some powerful insight to see here, so look at verses 19 through 21. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" So Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." So, serious question. Why were the disciples not able to cast the demon out of this kid? Now, keep in mind that Jesus had previously in chapter 12 sent the disciples out and given them power to cast out demons and to heal the sick. So this wasn't something new for these guys. They had done this many times before. So what changed? You know what I believe it was? I think that they became complacent. The disciples started thinking, well, we've done this before, so it's no big deal. But as soon as this evil spirit starts to put up a fight about leaving, then their faith seems shaken. I mean, there's people around. Everybody's looking. Why is it not working? Did Jesus' power stop? What am I doing? Listen, the Bible talks about different levels of demonic power. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, and against spiritual wickedness in the heavenly places." When you pray like what Jesus told them, you stay connected to the source. Guys, I can tell you from my own life that when I spend time with God in prayer, it's so much easier to have faith in him and trust him. Guys, it's the same reason why we constantly read about Jesus going by himself off to a private place to pray. With everything that Jesus was pouring out, he had to be poured into, and this is what spending time with God does for you. It fills you with faith. Guys, that is going to do it for us today with chapter 17. Now, we didn't cover everything in this chapter, so make sure you're reading it yourself, as there is so much good stuff in here. Don't want you to miss any of it. All right, hope you all have an amazing weekend and a wonderful day. Thank you as always for joining us today. God bless you guys. We will see you back